Hey, today we're going to talk about all different kinds of get-ups, not just Turkish get-ups, but really what it means to get down to the ground and then get back up again, all the different ways we can apply that, and why that's useful for everyday living, for longevity, and also for performance and just getting better at different things. So one of the things I think about a lot is a while ago, it's probably 12, I don't know, maybe not quite 15 years ago, but I remember when everyone was really into foam rollers, when the foam rollers were like the hot new thing and they were hard to find, and you could only find those blue soft foam ones. And before people had really realized, you can make an entire industry out of mobility toys and things like that. I remember when foam rollers were first coming in, and Dan John, in one of his articles, he made a very good observation. He said something along the lines of, I don't know if the benefits from foam rolling come from whatever is trigger point therapy or all these other theories, or maybe one of the best benefits of foam rollers is you just spend a lot of time on the ground, sort of opening up your hips, supporting your weight in different quadruped positions. And it could just be one of those things where actually the benefit of the activity maybe it had nothing to do with what we thought it did. Maybe it's just nice to spend time on the ground. I still use a foam roller from time to time, but obviously you can see that people don't do those big, long 20, 30, 40-minute foam rolling sessions before they work out the same way anymore. And in a lot of ways, dynamic stretching and static stretching and classic mobility has really come back into play again. So it's just one of those funny things about trends that people have in the fitness industry. But anyway, I thought Dan John's observation about it just being really good to spend time on the ground, and there's a host of benefits of spending time on the ground, getting down to the ground, up and off the ground is really good. And obviously, there's lots of other people who've talked about it. Katie Bowman talks about the importance of incorporating spending time on the ground into your everyday living. So, if you're chopping vegetables or whatever, why not do it on the ground? Um, Lots of interesting things to look in terms of hip mobility in cultures where people, sleep in the ground using tatami mats or whatever. And just not losing that ability to get from the ground back up, or even how you can get to the ground safely and build up confidence both in falling, but also just in receiving the ground and absorbing the ground. So I think this really speaks to the importance of creating a space or culture in your communities um, where people feel comfortable spending time on the ground, sitting on the ground, getting up and off the ground. They don't sort of feel embarrassed getting off the ground. Because I think a lot of times, especially as people get older, if they don't have a smooth or sort of graceful way to get up and off the ground, sometimes it's quite embarrassing for them. You see them sort of shuffle around and crawl and then try to pull themselves up by holding onto a sofa or something. And we really want to avoid people getting to that position. We want to make sure we keep their capabilities as broad as we can for as long as we can. And as I said, also spending time on the ground and groundwork is going to be really related to falling ability. Um, and the ability to get up off the ground is going to be related to autonomy. So especially as we get older, one of the biggest predictive factors in whether or not someone can live on their own is danger from falling. Can they get back up off the ground? And you have to remember, the less time you spend comfortably getting up and off the ground and thinking about falling and how to receive the ground, it means that when you do fall, the so for this reason, the Turkish getup has really become enshrined in the fitness industry, or just health, wellness, whatever, for about the last 15 years or so. It's really become one of those staple functional movements that people do, and for a good reason. It's a great movement. It's great for your shoulders, your hips, your thoracic spine, gives you core control, helps with tensegrity, coordination, balance, strength, gets you strong in different positions, overhead position, windmill position, various lunge positions, your windmill base, your open hinge positions. So the Turkish getup is a great movement, but it's just one. It's just one movement among many. We want to think about all these different opportunities that we can create to interact with the ground, getting off the ground. And I want to think about the environment, the conditions you're working in, what positions you want to hit, different implements you have, and other restrictions that might come into play. So in addition to just thinking about the Turkish getup, it's really helpful to think about all the other reasons why we might end up on the ground, and all the different reasons why we might need to get up off the ground, and all the different implements and restrictions we might encounter along the way. So groundwork, getting up, getting down, falling, receiving the ground, getting back up again. These are all really, really important skills for building up people's capabilities and ensuring long-term longevity. But it's also just going to help you get better at different skills. It's fun, and it's going to have a whole host of benefits. So that is what we're going to talk about in this video. All right, if I'm going to be running a session that has some elements of getting up, getting down again, one of the first things I might do is just do get up, get down as a warm-up. And it's really, really simple. There's all different kinds of ways to run it, but generally I'll do a sequence like this. So I'll have everyone stand up, get everybody nice and loose, do some shakes, do some wiggles, and say, okay, everybody, first movement, I want you to go ahead and lay down on your stomach. So everyone, any way they want to, they come down and they lay down on their stomach. Okay, good. Go ahead and get back up again any way you want to. All right, next I want everyone to go ahead and I want you to lay down on your back. So however people want to, you get people to lay down on their backs. Okay, and then get back up again however you want to. Already I can see I'm favoring my right side. So as a coach, you can start thinking about if people are favoring the same positions over and over and over again. Then what you can do is you can start adding restrictions or start adding different challenges in. So maybe when you can say, okay, I want everyone to put your right hand up in the air, and now this time I want you to keep it up in the air no matter what you're doing, and I want you to go ahead and lay down on your back. So different people will find different ways, have them get back up again. Okay, then you can try something different. Okay, everyone, this time I want you to put your left hand up in the air, and this time I want you to lay down on your stomach. I'll just keep it over my head, come down like this. Okay, get back up again. Great, so now we're just practicing getting up and off the ground. Then we can add other restrictions. You can have your hands in different places. You can say, okay, this time I want everyone to put your right hand on your right foot, and I want you to put your left hand on your left glute, on your left bum cheek. So now I want you to try to get down on the ground. So this way. Oh, I didn't say, let's say lie down on your back. Okay, come back up again. Try to get back up. So I've kind of made a challenge for myself here. Okay, that's not going to work. All right, that's quite a tough one. I failed on that one. Anyway, right away what we're doing is we're creating puzzles, creating challenges, getting people to get up and off the ground. You don't have to take it too seriously. Just do about 5 or 6 rounds of that. It's a very, very good warm-up, and people will get a little bit out of breath, and they'll also start thinking about the different positions they might end up in when they're getting down to the ground and back up again. Another thing that's fun to introduce when you're working with people getting down to the ground and back up again is to talk about the down and up test, the get down, get up test. It's just a simple test for sort of predicting longevity and overall health. It's used in a lot of countries, very popular in South America. I think it was developed in France. And it's just about how easily you can get down to the ground and back up again, minimizing points of contact. So usually the way it's done is from here, you cross your legs like this, and then you want to see, can you get down to the ground with control without using your hands or any other part? Okay, pretty easy. Now this next bit will be really easy for some people, it'll be really challenging for some people. It's pretty challenging for me because it is a reflection of ankle and hip mobility. So people who have really good deep squats are probably gonna be very good at this. People who are stiff, especially in their hips and their ankles, might have a bit of difficulty. But the part 2 is can you get up? Now the rules are you're not allowed to use your knees. You're really just trying to keep contact on the soles of your feet. And for every additional point of contact, okay, that's going to take a point off your score. Don't worry about the score. You just want to introduce the challenge. So can people get back up again? Oh, okay, that wasn't super controlled, but I was able to do it. But you'll see a lot of people when they get in this position, they're going to want to use a hand to get back up, or you might see people using a knee to get back up. And what we want to do is you want to see, can you just get back up again? Oh, that was much better. Okay. Can you get up like that? Just gets people thinking about it. You can kind of make some jokes about it, keep it fun, keep it light. Don't put anyone in a position where they feel bad about it, but it just gets people thinking. So the down and up test is a really nice thing to do, and you can check in from time to time. I'm much better at the test now than I was a year or 2 ago because I've spent some time on hip and ankle mobility. So it's nice to check in with people, and people will see that they do get better at the test as they do all these different kinds of movements. Another nice aspect of when we're working with getting up and down off the ground is doing some falling and rising work. So Neil Teasner has some great resources on that. Amos Rendau has some really good resources on that in Parkour Ukemi. But it's just the idea of falling and getting back up again. So there's all different kinds of ways we can do it. You don't have to start up high like this. You can have people start from lower positions, so you can have them spend all different kinds of positions. You can just have them practice falling from sitting, getting back up again, you know, have them practice falling from different positions and just trying to get back up again, things like that. So just falling and getting back up can be quite good. And then from there, you can gradually raise people up, have them practice falling, absorbing the energy and getting back up again, have them practice falling from different positions and getting back up again. It's just a nice way to spend more time on the ground. And obviously you can spend time up here. Nil has a really good drill that I've just been calling it the drunk guy drill, or the ragdoll drill. And this is the one where you just sort of allow yourself to kind of fall, get back up again, but you don't find your balance and you fall again, and then you get back up, and then you fall again, and you get back up. And it's a nice way to spend 2 or 3 minutes to build up people's confidence of falling, especially if you have nice soft ground like we do here during the early spring. It's nice for people just to kind of fall, not from a big height, get back up, find their balance, lose their balance, fall again, and just see where their body takes them. So that's one aspect of get-up training, is just adding restrictions and challenges and little games that you can do without adding weight. You don't immediately need to start adding weight to getting up. Something that's nice is just to kind of really broaden people's get up, get down abilities and get them really, really comfortable receiving the ground. So the falling in practice, the falling and rolling practice is really good, and just getting people even to start doing rolls and somersaults and things like that can be a host of benefits. And you're going to find a lot of positions you find yourself in when you're falling and getting back up again are going to feed into all the various get up challenges that we're going to talk about later in the video. Okay, so one of the things you want to consider with your get-up practice is the environment and the conditions outside, because we always train outside, and because we live in the UK and we work in England and Scotland, a lot of times it's going to be muddy out, it's going to be cold, there's going to be snow and frost on the ground, so you might not want to spend that much time lying on the ground. So this is one of the reasons why we spend a lot of time doing get-downs and not just get-ups. There's loads of variations. But I'm just going to go ahead and talk about one variation we do quite a lot, which is the windmill to half kneeling get down. So for this one, you start from standing position, overhead position, lower yourself down into a classic windmill. Maybe you do an elbow or palm windmill and get back up again. This is going to have loads of benefits, and you're going to visit lots of positions that are really useful. So first, make sure everyone's comfortable in their overhead position, nice and stacked in a spare grip. If you ever forget which leg goes back, whichever free hand, tap your leg, that's the leg that's going to go back. So I'm going to come down into a classic lunge. I'm going to open up into my windmill base, or my sort of open hip lunge. Now from there, there's lots of different ways to cue this movement, but I'm just going to, with control, making sure I have tension in my body, I'm going to come down here, I'm going to find a stack position. Don't rush through. With tension in my body, I'm going to come down, I'm going to find my elbow position like that, find my stability, come back up again, switch into a classic lunge, or not. You can stand up from here if you want to build that capability, but I'm going to get into classic lunge position and I'm going to stand up. And just that movement right there is going to have a lot of the benefits of a full Turkish getup, but it's something you can practice in wetter, muddier, colder ground, so you're not wallowing around in the mud on your back. It's really nice. It's really going to strengthen up your shoulders. It's going to build strength in different positions, especially that all-important windmill base position, which shows up again and again and again. So if you are working in muddy conditions, just consider different kinds of get-down variations and focusing on getting down into kneeling or half-kneeling variations and getting back up again. And you'll get a lot of benefits of get-up training without getting quite as muddy. Okay, one variation of get-ups that I really enjoy are get-ups from the 90-90 position or a quarter position. I enjoy these a lot because I'm very, very bad at them. So I find these really beneficial. In fact, a few years ago, I probably wouldn't have even been able to do a get-up like this. It took me a long time to be, even just to be able to get in that position, because I've got really limited internal rotation in my hips. So with this is we're just going to play around with this sort of 90-90 position, that was windmill, the shin box position, this quarta position, different ways of saying the same thing, but essentially being in this position from here and being able to get up. So you'll find that generally men find this a little bit more challenging than women, but not all the way. From here, can you use your glutes? Can you extend your hips to pop up to this position? And then from there, can you get up? And it looks simple enough, and it is, but there are lots of nice things we can do from this position. This one is especially good if instead of doing single kettlebell work, if you're doing dual kettlebell work, or if you're picking up a sandbag, or if you're a parent and you're trying to move a kid that's fallen asleep in your bed, you want to get them over to their own bed, you'll find yourself in positions like this a lot. So I can use some of these implements here. So one of the ways that you can add challenge to get-ups, okay, is if instead of one arm, you have two arms. So you can do this overhead, but that's going to make it much more challenging. I'm just going to do a front rack position. So if I do this from a front rack position and I need to get down and get back up again, all right, there's lots of ways I can do it. I can go in this double kneeling position, but one way or another, I'm probably going to find myself in a position that looks something like this, and then practicing getting back up again. You can do pretty good weight on this, especially if you're not going overhead. And just from here to here is really good. And then you can practice coming down here. Okay, if you're on the ground, you can do your double baby position here, coming up here, seeing if you can get up there, moving from here to here, like that. And because this isn't really a codified movement, there's lots of ways you can do this. Like I said, it really lends itself to working with sandbags and things like this. And there's all kinds of really nice sandbag variations. I'll talk about a few more later. But if you've got this, let's say you want to go to bed and you realize one of your kids has crawled in the bed and they're lying in the middle of the bed, so you can't stand on the bed, and it's too far away for you to hinge over onto it. So you need to get on the bed, but the kid's really low, and if they're 6'7", they're starting to get pretty heavy. So if I'm up here, a lot of times if I'm in the bed, I'll find myself in some kind of variation like this. I come down here, I get underneath, I stand up, get up like this, and then stand. Same thing on the way down. You can find some sort of variation. You can sit back into it if you want to and practice getting out. Lots of nice variations we can do from there. So spending time in that 90-90 or quarter position is really good. Like I said, especially good with dual kettlebells, sandbags, or any kind of double-handed thing where you don't have that hand to brace. So that's a nice variation. A variation of get up that I like quite a lot is the double kneeling variation. So a lot of times in the get up you find yourself in a half kneeling or lunge position or open lunge position. But one of the things I find, especially with new members, is they're really, really weak at the bottom of the lunge, and it's a position they'll avoid a lot. If people have been taught to do their lunges like this with restricted range of motion here, you're going to find that if you look at my back knee, when I come down to about here, you're just going to find people who collapse. You've got no strength in that position. So what I really like is to build up strength from the bottom up in the lunge, and this is why I like the double kneeling get up. So with the double kneeling get up, start however you want to. I'm going to grab two of these. You can do rack, you could do half rack, half overhead, double overhead. I'll do double overhead because I'm using two light ones. So all this is you just go from double kneeling, one foot up, so my right foot comes up, and I stand, and then I come back, switch legs, and now my left leg is in front, and I come up and I stand, and then I come back down again. And like I said, you can do any kind of implement, any kind of position on this. I like doing it with the overhead and the double overhead, but this is a really nice variation. Again, you don't get too muddy on this, but you're really going to build strength in that bottom of that lunge position that a lot of people need to build up. And the good thing about coming down here into that double kneeling position is you lose the tension, so it's a dead start. Unlike if people are sort of using the elasticity to bounce out of it, which is fine, and that's a perfectly way to move efficiently. But sometimes you want people to develop that dead start position. Same reason you might do a long rest on a bench press, or you might do pauses on your deadlift so you're not bouncing out of the bottom. From here, you have to come down here, build up your tension, and stand up. So the double kneeling variations are really useful. Another position that I think is worth spending a lot of time on is getting used to doing things from your B stance or from your kickstand position. So there's lots of different ways to set up your kickstand, but generally when we set up our kickstand, we want our back toe to be aligned with our front heel quite close. And the variation I really like the most is when my heels come off the ground, it sort of gets me in this low, very close lunge position. So normally we're always taught to lunge out like this in a classic 90-degree position, but you'll actually find when you're getting up off the ground, when you're rolling, and if you're doing other kinds of acrobatic work, or if you spend any time doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or things like that, you're going to find yourself in a much closer position like this. And actually, it's really nice to spend some time working in that position, especially if you have a gym background and you've been working most of your time either in a classic bilateral squat position or in a classic one-legged squat lunge position. If those are your only leg positions you find, then you're going to be missing out on all the strength and development right here. So I think it's good to do get-ups from here sometimes as well. And you could do all different kinds of things, but even just working, if you work on some variation of a B stance squat. So I'll come up here, I'm going to line up, and I'm just going to come down here and then come back up again. And this can be really hard on your knees if you're not used to doing that heels elevated, knee over toe position. But there are lots of nice variations you can do here. And if you're really strong in your lunge, this can be a good challenge, and it's going to build you up so you're more comfortable in that knee over toe position. And I find spending time in the knee over toe position actually helps me get a deeper squat because I'm spending more time in dorsiflexion, and as my body gets more comfortable in dorsiflexion, I find it opens up more degrees of movement. So spending some time in that B stance position, especially when you're adding get-up challenges, can be really beneficial. Okay, another skill I want to talk about are these adventure race style stone roll-ups. You see this a lot in adventure races of various brands where people are doing the Atlas lifts, but usually it's quite muddy, and because so many people are doing it, it creates this big divot, and it's very hard to do a classic pickup, especially if you're picking up a heavy Atlas stone. So one of the techniques that's come out of that I think is actually very useful is this sort of roll-up position. You'll see again with this, you sort of end up in a windmill base position, almost in a high quarta position like this. But what this one does, I think, is quite clever, is it uses your open knee to roll this up and stand up. So you think about all the variations you could do something like that. You could do like a ball slam, come down, pick up, ball slam to the other side, come down, roll up, pick up. This is a bit of pantomime right now because it's just 10 kg. This one's not much heavier. This is about 22 kg, but you can see the same idea. So this is with a strongman style sandbag. You can use any style of sandbag here. I'm going to get down low, sort of get into that low windmill base position, roll it up, come up here, stand. I can put it over my shoulder, come down. This time I'm going to do it on my right leg, get into a low position, come down, roll it up, stand, put it over my shoulder. Loads of different variations you can do there, but that adventure race style pickup can be really good. And you know, this is just similar to what we were talking about earlier, just getting comfortable, especially if you do lots of windmills and things, getting your hips down low and modifying this position. This is what we were talking about before. This is a variation of the bed pickup. So if you imagine this is a 6-7-year-old kid, once again, if one of your children is crawled in your bed, this is a nice position to pick things up on. This is actually a really great position to pick up because you still have the full hinge and you can still keep your back in a nice position and you can get down low. So there's nothing wrong with picking up from this position. Obviously it's not conventional. You wouldn't really do a barbell deadlift in the gym like this, but if you're trying to solve a problem, that's a really nice position to have. All right, this next variation of get up is one of my favorites. So while I really like Turkish get-ups, one of the issues with Turkish get-ups is because they are very high skill movement, they have different incentives from high intensity training. So Turkish get-ups are never really going to be appropriate to put in any sort of AMRAP or rounds for time or any kind of intense conditioning. So that's one downside to them, which is fine. They're a different tool for a different purpose. But I do sometimes see people program Turkish get-ups into conditioning, and it usually doesn't end up with very good results because they're at cross odds. Turkish get-up wants you to focus on quality, taking your time, not rushing through it. Whereas if you're doing some kind of time conditioning, you want to go as quickly as possible. So the two don't really match. That's one issue. Another issue is that there are lots and lots of benefits to the Turkish get-up, and with a lot of our programming, especially in the winter when the ground is cold or wet or frosty or whatever, we spend a lot of time in the overhead position going down. So again, variations of this, we don't spend much time on our backs. So when the spring comes and we start doing full Turkish get-ups and things like that, there's another variation I like to do, which is the sandbag get-up. So the sandbag get-up has a lot of the benefits of the first part of the Turkish get-up, especially this sort of core component, this rolling over sit-up that I think is really, really beneficial. But it takes out the kettlebell overhead, so you're gonna gotta drop the kettlebell on your head. It takes out a lot of the delicate shoulder positions, so it means that you can do quite a lot of these. So this is a nice movement. I do incorporate it a lot into the training, and it's perfectly okay to work this into any kind of intensity, high intensity conditioning. So often I'll start this at the beginning of the conditioning movement. This might be the first movement. So you start on the ground, you do some variation of the baby pickup. So this is gonna be just like you do with the Turkish get-up. You come over here, and now just like the Turkish get-up, this is gonna be my right side. So my right hand is hugging it close to my body, which means my right knee is pointing up the air. With my left hand, I have it over here. I like to have my palm down. Some people teach palm up. I like palm down because I like grabbing onto the grass. And it's a rotational sit-up. So it means that as you're pushing through this side, you're also pulling through. So you're doing a sit-up, but you're bringing your shoulder up and over your body to end up in this position here. From there, I pop up to my elbow, then I open up my hips, and I come back down again. So you can do a few of these quite quickly. And you get all the benefits of the first part of the Turkish get-up, especially that core work and that hip opening, but it's a movement that you can feel very comfortable working into any kind of high intensity conditioning. So those are the bag half Turkish get-ups, and I think those are a really nice movement. All right, so continuing with some sort of get-up variations, Turkish get-up variations, we have the Turkish sit-up. Now the Turkish sit-up, it's not that rotational sit-up that we were just working on with the bag. This is just the one that allows you to play with figuring out stacked joints and leverage. And it's sort of a nice one because it teaches people shoulder position, also kind of teaches an interesting rhythm, good shoulder work, good core work, and does have lots of carryover for other movements. So with the Turkish sit-up, there's lots of ways that you can incorporate it. So if you're in a double overhead position like this, you come down here, maybe you sit in, and then come down here. This could be your starting position for the Turkish sit-up. Now with the Turkish sit-up, if I have my hands back here, if I get into this leverage where all of a sudden it's above my head, it's gonna be very hard for me to do the sit-up. You know, obviously that's strength, it's leverage, but with the Turkish sit-up, what you do is you learn how to adjust the angle. As I bring the kettlebell forward, I use it as a counterbalance so I can get up. And it's fine, you can do it with one, you can do it two. One is quite nice. So again, you bring it forward, and you sit up, you stabilize, bring back down to act as a counterweight, come back down, stabilize, bring it forward, come forward, stabilize, and then back again. So that's really nice. It sort of puts your shoulders under stress at different angles, and it does have carryover for other kinds of overhead kettlebell work. So that's another way you can get some Turkish get-up benefits without actually doing the Turkish getup in its entirety. So those are some ideas for incorporating different kinds of getups. If you can think of some other ones, please let us know. Happy to incorporate them. Once again, just thinking about when you're doing this getting up and off the ground work, think about the environment, think about the conditions, think about the positions, the implements, any other restrictions, but also think about how it could be useful. So if you see yourself getting into a useful position, let's say you're doing some yard work, some gardening, you're playing with your kids, maybe you're doing some construction work, and all of a sudden you find yourself playing with an odd implement, you think, oh, that's interesting, this is really challenging. Think of those useful positions and see if you can take those and reincorporate them back into your training because they'll have all kinds of beneficial carryover. Okay, last thing I'm going to talk about is these Turkish sit-ups, which I think are quite a nice movement. And then I should also talk about how it relates to sandbag half get-up as well, which is we've been spending a lot of time looking at the top position coming down to half kneeling. But when you're working on get-ups, there's a lot of benefit to spending time lying on your back or lying on the ground and figuring out how to get up from there and building strength there, because that's where you get a lot of the core benefits from getting up in terms of spinal flexion and all kinds of thoracic and rotational strength. So the Turkish sit-up, lots of ways to do it. I'll just do it clean here. So if I have a double-handed sit-up here and I come down and I do some kind of variation, maybe I'll go ahead and sit into, whoa, 90-90, and the weight just took me down right there. I didn't do that on purpose. But this is a nice thing to play around with. I just keep this here. It's going to be that's a very pretty hard sit-up. But one thing that's nice about this is you can practice letting the weight of the kettlebell, so if I have it come forward here, I can use the weight to help balance me out. So if I try to do a sit-up here, it's going to be almost impossible because of just the way the weight is stacked. And if it comes over here, the leverage is going to be really, really difficult. But if from here, if I push it forward and I use that momentum, I can get into here. And Turkish sit-ups are just a nice way to work on shoulder mobility and work on strength and also work on timing and think a little bit about leverage. Now, that's a straight sit-up. It doesn't have any of that rotational component that a classic Turkish get-up sit-up would. But there is a variation of this that I really like, which is the sandbag half get-up. And honestly, this is probably one of my favorite movements just because people find it really challenging, but also really beneficial. So if I grab my sandbag here, put it here. Again, if you want to know more about the Turkish get-up, you can check out our Turkish get-up video. But this is a variation of that. And with this, from here, you can do the classic baby sort of pickup. You have to modify it a little bit, but you can get it onto your chest here. And now almost everything is the same as a Turkish get-up. So I'm going to count this as having my right side weighted. That means my right foot is going to be pointing here. Instead of my hand pointing in the sky now, I'm going to reach over it like this. And everything else is going to be the same. I'm going to come out here. I like to do the 45 degrees. I like to have my palm on the grass. I know some people teach it palm up, but I like palm down because I like the cue of being able to grab the grass and pull yourself across. And from there, I'm just going to do that sit up into that position, pop up here, and then I'll just do the final hip extension and then come back down again. And these are nice because actually you can go quite high rep on these because they're not as technical as the Turkish get-up. But they confer a lot of the benefits, and actually they allow people to use a heavier weight so they really can focus on getting even more benefit out of that initial get up out of bed movement, that initial kind of sideways sit up that's so good about the Turkish get-up. So these are really nice, and I would never program Turkish get-ups into a high stress conditioning, so an AMRAP or around for time, because I think it puts you at cross purposes. You have the quality on one side and then the time restriction and the incentives to move fast. So they're not really complementary in terms of goals, but actually this movement, the half sandbag get up is really nice. There's no reason why you couldn't program 3 and 3, 4 and 4, 5 and 5 of those into a higher intensity conditioning unit, and people would still get the benefit as long as they kept their form up. This would be fine. You wouldn't have to worry about all the finicky shoulder stuff. Most importantly, nobody's going to end up dropping a kettlebell on their head if they rush. So these are just different ways of thinking about get-ups. Obviously, there's loads more. If people have any other ideas, send them our way and we'll be happy to include them or talk about them. But the key thing is just to be creative and